Thanks.
Yes, this is a huge story we'll continue to follow, but trade wars aside, it has been a chaotic week at the White House.
That's right. The Chief of Staff, John Kelly, says the administration's handling of classified materials was not up to the standards he expected. This comes as the New York Times reports another bombshell.
And that is that President Trump asked Kelly to help remove his daughter and son-in-law from their White House posts. Mr. Trump is said to be upset that Jared Kushner's security clearance was downgraded while officials from 4 nations discussed how to manipulate him. And the president was also said to be unimpressed by his daughter Ivanka's trip to South Korea.
All right, let's get the reporting now from CNN's Boris Sanchez on the turmoil in the White House.
Just one of these controversies would be plenty for any president to deal with, but all of them compounded and unfolding in a short period of time gives you an idea of the amount of turmoil at the White House right now, the amount of pressure that President Donald Trump is under. Key allies have privately told CNN that they are worried about the president, that they fear that he is losing control. We understand that the president has recently lashed out at some of his staff, including Hope Hicks, the communications director, apparently berated by the president for her testimony before Congress and shortly thereafter leaving the White House. The president is also frustrated with his chief of staff over his handling of the Rob Porter saga and the controversy surrounding security clearances. He attacked his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, yet again this week. There are also questions about key figures within the administration potentially moving on from the White House. You have the head of the National Economic Council, Gary Cohn, reportedly threatening to resign over the announcement that the president would levy tariffs against imported steel and aluminum. And H.R. McMaster, the national security advisor, apparently exploring options beyond the White House. The president isn't just frustrated and at odds with some of his staff. It's also his own family. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, getting less than a vote of confidence from the president in recent reports over press coverage of Kushner's financial dealings overseas, and reports that foreign governments have apparently analyzed those to try to find ways to manipulate the president's son-in-law and senior advisor. That's why allies are telling us that they are worried that the president is losing control, and we should note that this could potentially get worse soon. The special counsel, Robert Mueller, has given every indication that he intends to interview President Trump, something that the White House counsel says they are still working on negotiating. Boris Sanchez, CNN, traveling with the president in Palm Beach, Florida.
Much on the administration's plate inside the White House and outside of the White House. Let's talk about it with Inderjeet Parmar, professor of international politics at City University in London. Inderjeet, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's begin with this personnel dilemma for the White House. His son-in-law has had his security clearance downgraded after questionable business dealings inside the White House, among other things. Should he step aside?
Well, the probes which began with possible meddling by Russia in the election have now moved very far away from that, but they are investigating quite legitimate concerns about the business interests of key people very, very close to the president. So I think that it basically violates a very large number of ethical concerns, concerns about conflict of interest, and these are the kind of concerns, in fact, that were raised about Hillary Clinton and many other Democrats before her as well, that their connections with big money and so on, and foreign forces and governments. So yes, I think it does seem to suggest that if these allegations are proven and they actually have evidence base around them, then I think that makes the position untenable.
And the New York Times is also reporting Mr. Trump may be ready for both, and we just heard that story, Jared and Ivanka, to move back to New York and give up their roles. But he already lost his close aide, Hope Hicks, this week. Rob Porter also. So many others have bailed. Others could be headed out. What more exits could do to the inner working and affect the stability of this administration to the world?
Well, I think that's it. That's the intensifying crisis and the crisis swirling around the president and presumably right within him too. And I suspect that tells us a little bit about his usual strategy. When the crisis intensifies, or any crisis intensifies around him, he tends to throw out a few diversionary forms of announcement or tweets and things like that. And I suspect that his tweeting that trade war is good, that breaking alliances and relationships can be a very good thing to defend American interests, and possibly even going out on a limb in regard to gun control. I think he's trying to sort of divert a lot of attention away from what is a crisis coming right close to the White House and the Oval Office itself.
Right, and that involves Russia. And, you know, Russia, what might be their reaction to this turmoil that we're seeing in the White House and beyond from this administration? That is what they've been working to achieve, isn't it?
That is very difficult. I don't know if I can comment on what the intentions of the Russian government have been, but what I can say and talk about is that although the series of probes and investigations have largely focused, or originally began around the idea of Russia and its influence and its attempt to destabilize the United States, the fact remains that the policies pursued by the Trump administration have not really gone against the dominant trend that he inherited from President Obama. In fact, you could say that he's probably strengthened that tendency somewhat. So in Syria, for example, you can look at the way in which that intervention and the now what looks like a permanent military intervention in regard to Ukraine and the selling of various kinds of missiles and other weaponry to the Ukrainian government, the stationing of even more forces at the Baltics, of NATO, etc. So, and the military expenditure increases. So I'm not sure what the situation really allows us to draw in regard to what Putin might think. What it has enabled is that Putin now is able to ramp up the arms race as well. And he's arguing that he's doing it in response to the kind of people who are saying that Russia is a big threat, and they've been militarizing the situation.
All right, we've seen that announcement from Vladimir Putin this week. We appreciate your thoughts. Inderjeet Parmar, thank you.
Thank you.